G'day guys. I thought about making a video about myself. People keep on asking me about where I come from, where I live, things of that sort. And so I thought about why not give you a bit of an overview and a bit about my sort of background and stuff like that. Don't know whether people will be still asking me questions after this, but anyway, here goes. Let me just share the screen. So here is Google Earth Pro. We've got Australia down here. There's Eurasia. There's Africa, Middle East. There's Japan up there. There's Indonesia. We're down here, down under. There's Antarctica. And you Americans are all over here from North America all the way down to the tip of South America. Anyway, so let's get back to Australia, the down under place. So let's zoom in. That's Tasmania. That's where I live, on that island in the city of Hobart, so which is the capital. Okay, pretty much that's the place I come from. So now, where does my ancestry come from? My ancestry comes from very far away, back in Greece. This place. Oops. So Greece is in the southern Balkan region. You've got mainland Greece, which is this part, and then you've got the Aegean Sea, which is just an archipelago full of Greek islands all the way down to Crete. So as I zoom in, you can see the place is just littered with all these islands and all that. So my ancestry comes from Monemvasia, this sort of area down here. Oops. I think it's that leg there on that side. There's Sparta, and it's south of it. It's either on this leg or that leg. I can't remember now. One of the two legs. Anyway, so there's Athens over there, just so people can get their bearings. There's Patra. There's Corfu up there. And I lived in this city here called Agrinion on the west coast. So that's the city I lived in. We had all these lakes here. I nearly managed to drown myself in that lake and that lake. But anyway, that's another story for another time. As a youngster, I was trying to traverse in the other one on the other side with a bicycle across part of rushing, because part of the river came into the lake and I was trying to cross it. I slipped. Anyway, long story. Yes, attempting to save my bike, I nearly drowned. But anyway, so this is the city that I lived in. Zoom all the way in, you can see the central square. Back then, it didn't have so many trees. Now it has far more trees. So, and there was a coffee shop there that I spent a lot of time, and there was an ouzo place up here that sold ouzo grappa and stuff like that I spent a lot of time as well at it as a youngster. So and there's a park up here. Actually, my first job was as a waiter right on the corner here, the property. Very nice family. And this was what we call in Greece a psistadia. A psistadia is where you're cooking meats. That's what it is. And most of the restaurants, large parts of the restaurants in Greece are psistadies. Obviously, Greeks love their meat. And so we would cook goat, sheep, and piglets. When it came to beef, it was primarily burgers and stuff, like patties and stuff like that. Different types. Sometimes they were rounded types, so it was a bit different. And they were actually cooked in lard back in those days. Probably now they're using seed oils and crap like that, but back in those days it was very different. We're talking about the 70s now, late 70s. Very different. Because even McDonald's up until the 90s was still using tallow. So, and we in our shop for our fish and chips and all that, we used also dripping and tallow. We used to buy it just further up from a side street where Dad currently lives. You could actually see the old building, but now it's been turned into a unit complex. But back then, it wasn't the case. Sort of upmarket units. But in the old days. So that's pretty much, I lived down here in this area here for one period, and then we moved to the northern part up here in this direction. The place doesn't even, the home, there's a big house, a big building now there, multi-story. They've torn down the old house. So very different than what it used to be. So, yeah, my mum comes, so you come down the main highway, and anybody that knows this part of Greece, this is Makrinia, a whole lot of villages along here, and Sevgaraki is where my mum's older sister lived, and Papadatis, which is further up here. Went too far up. And there's Papadatis. That's where my mother comes from. And Gerasevo is where her mother comes from, not very far away. So her dad came from this, and her mum came from this village. And pretty much her mum actually came from a very wealthy landed gentry sort of family. They owned a lot of land in this region. It's all the way up through here. If you go to the north, there's an ancient Greek area. Let me just find it. It's called Thermo. There it is, Thermo. this is where my mother's on both sides of the family originates, from this region. So you have to go all the way through here, come up the road, you can see it comes all the way around here, feeds up and gets up to here. And that's where mum's ancestry comes from. Dad's comes from the Peloponnese, as I said, down there where I showed initially. Now, if you go up through this road, this is a main arterial road that goes all the way to the capital of the other province, and you go across here. These are big, massive lakes. They're hydropower stations through here as well. And there's Psilovrachos. This is where Dad comes from, this village here. So his dad, his granddad, his great-grandfather, so came from this area. And also the three brothers that moved from the south of the Peloponnese with a war of liberation ended up settling in this region. But my genetics are Peloponnesian from the south. My genetics, because that's where my ancestry comes from primarily. So this is the actual bridge along there, and that's the line there, the boundary for the different provinces. This is Dolokanania, that's Evridania. Oops, I just said that in Greek, didn't I? Yes. Etolia, Karnania, and Evritania on this side. It's down here. It actually goes right into the lake off the main road. Dad's got a property here. It's on low tide. It usually comes out to there. Oops. Is it moving? Somebody's got the road center line in the wrong place. Sometimes got a curl or bend like that. It's distorting. So that there is property of my dad's twin brother. He's passed away now. That's one of their boats, with another larger boat down further there where they do a lot of their fishing. One of my cousins, George, he comes up here. If I can actually move it slightly. And pretty much that's Dad's land all the way down from there. I remember this fencing. So it's, yeah. George did go up there and clean it up a bit, so but you could actually put a home in here if you wanted to. So I'll just exit out. And that goes all the way down to there. So where that that boundary is there. That's sort of a square or rectangle to be more precise. So that's low water mark at the moment. When there's a lot of water, it usually can reach up to here. So as you can see, even the drain pipes are actually revealed. So that's pretty much the Google Earth stuff. It's a beautiful lake, and you can actually look at the it's not the same. See if I can actually get onto the bridge and see where we can actually see the images, because just look at the color of the water. It's because of the minerals. It's got a beautiful, the blue. One thing that, photos can't really bring out that quality, but if you're actually in a slight elevation, you're looking down, it looks surreal. It's got this like a surreal effect. The blues are just like, like you see in those precious stones, which have got blue in them, and they've turquoise, and they have that sort of funny blue color, lightish with some, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. And so, yeah, it's an interesting area. So, there are a few people on this side of the river, a few Northern Europeans, a few Germans, and a few others that have actually settled here because they really like this whole area, because of the beauty of it. Plus, I can tell you, it's really good fishing in this whole lake and some of the river systems. Like you can really get massive fish, really large ones. So there's not a lot of people fishing up here. So they just grow and grow into these big, massive fish. So it's great for sports fishermen to come up to these sort of areas. It's really one of those regions that people don't really know about. It's really undiscovered. And that's why it's probably one of the few places in Greece you can still catch really large fish. Anyway, we will get rid of that in that regard. So, Harry's traits. We'll first look at my ancestry, so we'll go into that. People that may have not seen it, I think I've only shown it once in a live stream. Pretty much I've already told you where I come from, so the report's not going to be that. So we'll just go through it a bit fast, because it's, now what is it doing? We'll give it a few seconds to refresh. It's never this slow, normally. Okay. Yes, it's pretty boring, my report. European, 99.1%. Southern European, 99.1%. Greek, Balkan, 99.1%. Primarily Peloponnese. And this is the West Asian. So pretty much this is the region that's Persia, that's Iraq, that's Turkey, that's there, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia are the regions. Well, that little bit there and that little bit there and that larger bit there is Azerbaijan. There's Cyprus, And Greece, that's Albania. That's Northern Macedonia, as it's called, which I'm not happy with that name, but anyway. Stealing somebody else's heritage is what I call it, just because they got brainwashed by Tito and the communists over multiple generations, and now they think they are something that they're not. But anyway, it's for another day. Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, and that's Serbia. Montenegro, that's I don't know how they've got it like that. There's Croatia. Anyway, there's Bosnia-Herzegovina. But, okay, we're going to get to my full report. Anyway, so pretty much Greece, 99.1%. And the only other thing that I've got is the old Anatolian genes, the old agricultural. So pretty much, yeah. So this is the broadly northwest Asian. So Northwest Asian, we're talking about Asia Minor. So Asia Minor, the old populations that lived there that don't exist anymore were the Hittites, the Lydians, these sort of populations. To a large extent, they were, after Alexander the Great sort of conquered that whole region, they were sort of assimilated within the Greek world. So they became part of the Greek world, more or less. So I've got 0.9% of them are people that no longer exist. I do have nearly 1%. But otherwise, pretty much it's boring. I don't really have anything else other than Greek. And when we look at Greek, the majority, so strong to weaker, my majority comes from the Peloponnese, number one, that region. So, as I said, I come from one of those legs, primarily my ancestry. Zoom out a bit. Nope, that's not going to work. Anyway, 2 is the Central Greece part. That makes sense because I'm pretty much up in these mountainous regions. And remember, I said up through here, his mum comes from, and dad comes up close to that boundary there. So it's within that region, the second part. Obviously, they settled in those areas originally, both sides of the family. So that makes sense that, because people back in those days, it was not the public transport or planes or stuff like that to move around. So obviously you're going to be, let's say, hanky-panky and doing the odd thing with your neighbours and people that are in close proximity. So the next one is West Greece, obviously, because I lived in this part, and so obviously that would be the next part. The surprising one was the fourth one, Attica. which is around Athens. So that part. So that was quite interesting. That was my fourth strongest, but most is in the southern part of Greece. Thessalia is my fifth. Central Macedonia is the next one. This is Greek Macedonia. And even the ancient one just extended to this amount. That's why that wasn't called Northern Macedonia. In antiquity, it was called something else, Paeonia, a different name altogether, a different people. And let alone the Slavs came in at 600 AD, so they're not even related to the people that used to exist there. So just to make that point. But anyway, we are the indigenous people of this region, have been for thousands of years, and the recent genetic tests of 2017 that were done by American academics, and they went to Greek Macedonia all the way down to Cyprus, looked at the bones of my ancestors and compared to the modern Greeks, and pretty much modern Greeks are 70-odd%. This is what updated the actual haplogroup information, and that is why my numbers went up to 99.1% from the old report, which was about 70-odd%, and 30% was from Italy. But the southern Italians were, let's not forget, in ancient times, they were Greek colonies. So no wonder most southern Italians are Greek. But we won't say that because that'll upset the Italians. But that is the reality. And so that is the genetics of that region as well. So that's where that part comes. The next part. Now, why would I have genes that are related to Central Macedonia so far away from the south? Simple. The Macedonians were Doric, just like the Spartans, Doric, and most Peloponnesians were Doric. That's why I was quite intrigued that I did have some Ionic, and even the Ionian Islands, but that's not really Ionia. Ionia used to be over here in Asia Minor, on the coast there. We just renamed them because we no longer control that part of the world. That's why this is Doric land as well. That's just a modern name. Northern Aegean, surprise that I had. Ipiros, I thought I would have more of Ipiros, which is just to the north of us. So that was very surprising. And I do have Southern Aegean. That doesn't surprise me because I know people from here, from southern Peloponnese, did move back and forth between Crete. And there are some Sopanos's distant relatives, very, very distant relatives, that do live in Heraklion in Crete. So, so those are the 10 major regions that I come from, but most of my genetics come from the Peloponnese. This is where the strongest, as you can see, the darkest color compared to all the others that are much lighter. So that's the strongest genetic from that region. That area is Pylos, there is Corinth, and there is Sparta. And here is Argos, and these are ancient names, and Mycenae, which was where Agamemnon sailed from to Troy. And Troy's up that way. So we go to the Northern Aegean. Up here is where Troy was. So they sailed all the way up here. So my origins pretty much come from the heartland, so to speak, Mycenaean heartland. Proud of that part, actually. That definitely am. Anyway, let's move on to my traits. This will be interesting and funny. Anyway. So, physical features. I don't know whether I should be showing this. Anyway. Back hair, Harry. Your genetic predicts 72% chance you have little or no back hair. I do have very little, so that's true. Bald spot, 51%. Not, I've had a bit of, when I was actually on a carb-centric diet, yes, or you past kibble lovers, I know who you are. Yes, I did have a bit of a bald spot growing at the time. That's gone. Cheek dimples. Chance you do not have dimples. 77 chance you do not have cliff cheek. And that's true. I don't. Cover that. We'll move on. Dandruff. Yes, I did suffer with dandruff. When I was on a kibble diet, I don't anymore. So just because you've got genetic predisposition, obviously you have to eat the inappropriate foods that probably help it along. So even when I was actually keto, I still had a bit of dandruff, not a lot, but a bit. But since going carnivore, that problem's gone completely. Now, this one here, earlobe types. Chance you have detached earlobes, and I do have just slightly detached, and that is a Roman thing. Well, it's considered a Roman thing, but, sort of. Maybe some of my ancestors had a bit of hanky-panky with some Romans, possibly. Yes, and the Romans had plenty of hanky-panky with a lot of Greeks. That's why you can't make sense. We're so intermixed. They don't call it the Greco-Roman Empire for no reason. Early hair loss. Yes, a lot of my relatives. 70% chance you will experience hair loss or thinning before the age of 40. I was having alopecia. I mean, now you guys know that pretty much, look at the hair. It's sort of grown. It's big, thick. I won't put it out of whack. I just brushed it to do this video. And so, yeah, many of my relatives who are still eating kibble, they do experience this problem. Dad's alopecia is actually reduced since I've got him eating more meat. And I've tried to say to him, look, Dad, you've got less bald spots. Don't you think you should eat more meat? He sort of looks at me. Anyway, that's for another day conversation. Doesn't always comply. These old people, I give up sometimes. But yes, the carnivore diet has helped prevent me going all the way, because I started having a lot of thinning above and a bit of a bald spot in the back and stuff like that, and didn't look good. Didn't freaking look good at all. So earwax type. Sticky, wet earwax. Yeah, mine is a bit like that. I always found that annoying. But anyway, what can you do? Damn genetics. And it's not as if it's, like 70% or something like that, 93%. Guaranteed. That's damn annoying. Eye colour. Now, my eye colour, genetics, even though Dad's Mum had brown eyes. Dad has blue eyes. I've got green eyes, but green eyes which are sort of a slightly less lighter, in a sense. My younger sister's, hers are slightly lighter, slightly. And my older sister, she's got brown eyes like my mum had. So this is really all over the place. I do have green eyes. So it's that. So that 9% seems to be the one that actually did happen, rather than the other ones. So, but it's all over the place, as you can see. For these genetics, the variability is quite pronounced. It just, yeah, probably just lucky. It's a spit of the dice because there's nothing really very strong, any of them. So who knows? Just one of those things. I probably got a bit more from Dad's side, and possibly the reason why my eyes ended up green, possibly. Anyway, let's go back. The finger length, when your ring finger is longer, as you can see, my ring finger is longer. There's a thumb. There's a ring finger is longer than this one, the index. And so, again, on the other side, oops, let me just put it straight up. It's just slightly. So let me just straighten it up. Anyway, it just indicates you get slightly higher male hormones. So that's all that meant. So you end up having more testosterone given to you compared to other kids. So it hasn't made me a brute. I can just tell you that, at least. I'm a colourful person. People have to really push me before I become excessively violent. But yes, I keep it under control very well. Freckles, 77%. You have few, if any, freckles. I used to get a few, but the only place I used to get them would be just above here, just when I was a young kid. Very few. I never got them all over my face and all that. Very few freckles. My younger sister got more freckles than me. Loser. She'll probably watch this, so I'm just going to throw a few remarks out there, as you do, towards your siblings. Hair photo bleaching, 51%. I do get that effect, but it doesn't, if I'm out of the sun for a while, it actually does recover a bit, so it's all over the place. But in my relatives, obviously this just covers photo bleaching. There are other genes which cover sort of white, going white and all that. And all my relatives, on my mother's side in particular, oh God, my cousins, they went, this is on mum's side. Mum went in the 30s. My sister's the same. My cousin's the same. For me, I just started now in my 50s, I just started losing pigmentation and going grey. So it's taking me far longer, like 2 decades longer than my relatives. So I haven't been doing too bad on that front. Hair texture. Yeah, it is slightly wavy. That's all. I don't have curls really, unless I deliberately cause the curls, and if I really brush my hair really well at the time when it's not completely dried, I can get it down to straight, but it is slightly wavy. That is true. And it is sort of brownish. It's actually light brownish. When I was young, when I was a child, it was slightly, it was that light brown with a few blonde hairs in between. And then it just went light brown as I grew up. And then in my 30s onwards, it became a bit darker. But that's probably because I was avoiding the sun as well. Back in those days, it's probably the reason why I also ended up possibly extending, not going grey. Possibly, I'm not sure. It's a theory at this stage. I could be wrong. Newborn hair. Yes, I did have quite a bit of hair, 55%. So yes. Red hair, I got none. My older sister's got a bit, but brown with a bit of redness in it. Very little, but I've got bugger all. Mine's pretty much 99% non. Skin pigmentation, pretty much fair within these, moderate fair and that sort of stuff. My older sister, she's got a bit of olive, a bit, not a lot, but probably I'm somewhere more closer to fair. That sort of stuff. Yeah, I struggle to tan. My younger sister tans much easier than me, and so does my older sister. I do struggle. Yeah, I have to be out in the sun continuously for days upon days, right throughout the whole summer. When I was a youngster, I just didn't wear a top, and I just basically in shorts on my bicycle. And so I did end up, that was the only time in my life that I ended up, with getting tanned, and then coming back to Australia, particularly Tasmania, which is 40 degrees south, and you don't get much sun down here. Pretty much went fair again completely. So haven't managed. If I stay out the sun continuously, I do eventually get a tan. It does take time. My sisters tend to tan much easier. I tan much harder. But so does, Dad. He does as well. He tans much harder. My mum used to tan much easier. So I've probably got more of my dad's rather than my mum's on that front. So it's just one of those things which is annoying. It's sort of like at this age, I've just given up on it. I did want to have a nice tan. My younger sister still rubs it in. But anyway, she's with the B word. She knows what I mean. Anyway, stretch marks. This is one good thing that I'm really happy about, that 89%, and I don't, even when I lost 20 odd kilos in one period of time, and even the 15 kilos I lost in 6 months doing deep keto, I ended up with no stretch marks whatsoever. So that's one good thing to have in your genetics. So that's one thing I'm happy. Everybody else bitches about that. I don't have to. Toe length. Yes. I do. Chance you have a big toe. Yes, I do. On both legs. And actually my second toe on my left leg is just even slightly shorter than the other one. So unibrow. Yes. Chance you a little bit of, it's probably just a chance, yes. Widow's peak. No, I don't have that. And the genetics also are pretty good on that. So now that we've covered the major things, and we'll go to the smells, tastes and smells. Asparagus odor detection. Likely can smell. Yes, I can. Bitter taste. Likely can taste. Yes, I can. Cilantro taste aversion. Never really into the stuff. I understand why now. Slightly higher odds of disliking cilantro. That makes sense. So there's a genetic reason. This one I was confused. More likely to prefer chocolate over vanilla ice cream. I actually prefer vanilla ice cream over chocolate. So the complete opposite. But I have to say I like both. I do like both, chocolate and vanilla. Vanilla just slightly more. Is that going to go in there? Hello, react. And it's understandable. It's only 59% and 41%. So it's nearly very close to even. No wonder I like both. So, but slightly more vanilla, even though genetically I shouldn't. But I do. So I'm giving the finger to those genetics. Anyway, sweet and salty. Likely prefers salty. I do. I don't really I like savoury. I don't like sweet stuff, but I do like savoury and I do like salty stuff. And I do tend to salt my food quite a bit sometimes. I just like the taste of salt. I do have these really nice salt, which comes from salt beds. And it's just these flakes. You just put them in your mouth. Nice. Anyway, let's move on. The weird and wonderful. Okay. Ability to match music pitch. Less likely to be able to match a music pitch. That's true. That was always disappointing. I did actually attempt to do music and it just wasn't my thing. Yeah. Bit annoyed about that one. Why I blame both of my parents. Anyway, bunions. Less likely than average to have had a bunion. Good. Less likely than average to be afraid of heights. No, I'm not afraid of heights. I've even gone around cliff sides with a bicycle. So I don't really worry about heights. I'm not saying that I don't worry about them, but I don't really have a fear. I can feel uncomfortable at extreme heights. I think that's just normal, but especially when you're not exposed on a continuous basis. But I don't fear heights. That is correct. Fear of public speaking? Nope. Well, you see me here. I am talking to you, aren't I? Anyway. So, seeing is believing, as they say. Anyway. Flat feet. Nah, don't have that. My brother does. Flat foot. I have high arch. That's what I do have. And tend to put a lot of pressure on my toes, which isn't a good thing either. So, and I do have some flat shoes, but I have to put an inlined sole to enjoy them. The casual are really nice. But yeah, if you wear them without the inline sole, it can be quite painful on the feet. For me, anyway. Hair thickness, less likely to have thick hair. That's true. But I think that is a genetic predisposition. I think if you start taking sulfurs or rich sulfur amino acid foods and stuff like that, it does make a difference. Well, it has for me anyway. Misophonia, average odds of hating chewing sounds. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's an extreme hatred or anything like that, but the average odds of hate, yeah, it does annoy me. Especially if you're on a plane or public transport and somebody's chewing right next to your ear, it's not enjoyable for me anyway. Mosquito bite frequency, likely bitten less often than others. That I can attest to that. What's the percentage of that? just to check it out. I haven't checked it out in the past. Frequency, okay, fairly even Steven. 42 fewer reports the same. Okay, the same. So the likelihood of more bites is only 16%. See that young sis? My younger sister, Susie. Loser. She gets bitten like mad. The Mozzies love her. I remember one year she got bitten so bad, she had spots all over her face. And as a loving brother, I gave her a hard time. So, likely phonic sneeze reflex. No, I don't have that. That's when you see bright lights and you start sneezing like mad. So, no, I don't have that issue whatsoever. And wake up time. Yeah, that's sort of, I'm getting into that time slot at the moment. Seem to be around that. I'm a night owl. Yeah, there you go. Morning person, night person. I am definitely a night person. I'm definitely not a morning person. Let's see how truthful this is. When I was in my 20s. Yeah, that sounds right. Struggled to get out of bed. I'm not kidding you. It's the reason why I went into hospitality, because it was always working in pubs or stuff like that, and it was evening work or afternoon work. So I didn't have to, I could stay up late and then get to bed late and then wake up late, because I just could not get up really early. So hospitality industry was much better suited for me as a youngster, I can tell you. So 30s to 8:30. That's right. As you get older, you sleep less or whatever. And 8 o'clock at 40. And at 50, 7:35 or 7:30. Around 7:30, I do wake up nowadays. Sometimes a bit later if I go really late to bed, like 1 o'clock or whatever. But most of the time, and that's when I wake up at 8:30. Then it's a mad rush to get ready and then off to work. Oops. So what will happen in the future once I get to 60? All right. So I'll wake up even earlier. Wonderful. Does that mean I have to sleep early as well? I think so. So they are just presuming that I will have an older mindset. All I can say about that. Now, you've got no more traits. We've covered that. Go out, all the way out to the front page. Okay. Maternal Hoppler groups. These are the Hoppler groups that I talk about. Once a population lives in a certain locality and they just hanky-panky amongst themselves, you'll end up basically having certain common traits, genetic traits, which means that people have lived in the same area. Generally speaking, we're all 99.9999999% identical, of a group of humans that were about 1,000 to 10,000 people, that or possibly even less, that survived in the distant past. So pretty much all humanity. I think it's us. There's a couple of species. Us, what's that cat family? I think it's the cheetah, not the leopard, the cheetah. The cheetah is also has very little variability, genetic variability. They really are very closely related. It's probably why they also have less diversity and are more prone to or risk of, when one disease hits one, it goes right through the whole lot of them. A bit like the flu and many other things goes through us because we're so closely related. But the Hoppler groups, they are groups that lived in a certain area which intermixed primarily with those people, and obviously you go through stages. So on the maternal side, which is my mum's side, so pretty much in Central East Africa, about 180,000 years ago. We were in that location, or mum's distant ancestors. Then L3, 65,000 years, about there, and the N that moved into the Middle East. It's unclear whether that way or that way, across from, into Yemen, where I think there's Djibouti in that area. About there, went across. So, and the N was 59,000 years ago. And then we move on to 19,500, and that's in the Caucasus, pretty much that sort of area. And so that's where I got my Indo-European stuff from mum's side. And then the other part, and the N1B1, which is the one that actually on the maternal side is about as distant as 14,000 years ago. So what did they have? So it must be the one that actually came in from Asia Minor, the agriculturalists. So that's that one. And they're close up here to the Caucasus. Okay, so that's that one on the maternal side. Interesting. And the paternal. Okay, that's even older. Okay, from slightly further east. Okay, so that part was 275,000 years in this area. Is that Kenya or close to it? Or probably slightly south of Kenya, possibly. Anyway, so that's that. And then the next one further up, which is, this is sort of the Horn of Africa. So within the Horn of Africa, about 76,000 years. And then further north, which is sort of the southern Sudan region, Ethiopia, southern Sudan, 73,000 years. And then through the Sahara and the Middle East, along the Middle East, along between Sahara and the Mediterranean coastline 23,000 years ago. So it's this. So some groups went across here into North Africa, pretty much. Most of these are Berbers today. And this group went from there, which was 73,000 years ago, went one into Europe, one into North Africa, one into West Africa, and one into South Africa. So Dad's lineage has much wider sort of branching off. Interesting. And so what do they say? That group, today men bearing this Hopla group are also common in southern Europe, including in the Balkans, Iberia, which is Spain, Portugal, and Italy. In Greece, Bulgaria, Albania, between 15 and 30% of men bear Hopla group EM78. Their ancestors were likely relatively late arrivals to the region, while some branches of the Hopla group E were carried into Europe nearly 8,000 years ago. Recent research suggests that the major spread of the EM78 occurred in the last 5,000 years or so during the Bronze Age. Okay, so they must have been they came out of Africa, probably in the Middle Eastern area, the Levant area, and then later on branched in. While the majority of European males trace their recent ancestry to Turkey and the Middle East, which is Asia Minor, because that's what it was called back then, some men carry the EM78 from Spain. Okay. That's probably where the other branch along here goes up this way. So there was from the western part and the eastern part. Okay. Well, there you go. Spread with the first farmers. Okay. So all these sort of areas. So we can still see this in Portugal, Spain, Palestine, all the way down to Southern Africa and Russia. So Eastern Europe and Northern Balkan regions. Okay. Sort of areas that it spread. I actually didn't look at mums at the bottom end. I should check that out. So N gave rise to many of the major Hopla groups across Eurasia. So that's where I'm getting my pastoral ones. So remember, the Hopla group N migrated across the continent. New offshoots arose, many of which were major Hopla groups in their own right. An early Hopla group travelled between M along the southern coast of the continent to Australia, were the Hopla group 0 and S off R, which stemmed from the N within a few thousand years after the exit from Africa, dominates in Europe, Western Eurasia, and W and X sister branches to R are widespread across Europe and Central Asia, where all these were involved in both early colonization and in expansion of agriculture into those regions, and widespread amongst both Asians and Native Americans whose ancestors crossed a land linked Siberia to Alaska more than 14,000 years ago. Probably a bit earlier than that, but anyway. won't argue. But some of these populations that are living in Central Asia and all that are definitely pastoral. So, into these areas. And you've got all these populate at the 19,000. It's pretty much Caucasus, Georgia, mountains. Yeah, these are all pastoral populations up there. And the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Berbers and all that, they pretty much also, with their camels and stuff like that, are also pastoral or pastoral genes. So it doesn't surprise me in that regard. So it's probably more from mum's side than maybe, don't know. It's complicated. These things are complicated. You should know that, boys and girls. Anyway, that's not what I wanted. Let's just go to home page. See if I missed anything. Pretty much covered all that. And we've seen that. We've seen that. The traits. Yep. I'm not going to show you relatives because that would show names of people that wouldn't be appropriate. Just in case I missed anything. Oh, that's just the same stuff that we were looking at the other part. Yep, that's pretty much all the same. I think I've covered everything. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell, where I come from, where I live, some of my traits and things. Could be worse. My origins and my ancestors and what they got up to and stuff like that. So, look, a lot of these things are going to be similar with a lot of people when you do check and stuff like that, because we all do come from out of Africa. It's quite clear, indisputable within the genetics. But we do come out at different times, different ways, from different paths, and interact with different, and then at different stages are in different regions where we intermix with a certain group of people over a very long length of time. And so it means that we're related to those people. We've got common history, culture, and all those sort of things. But in the end, 99.99999 are still common amongst all of us. So we're still part of one human race and many ethnic groups, which is what the Hoppler groups, that's what they really signify, that you're part of an ethnic group that has been closely related culturally, linguistically, and done a lot of hanky-panky amongst each other for a very long time. That's really what it means. The hanky-panky stuff. That's the critical part, because common language and all that, there's going to be another groups that have, today's there's international languages and all sorts of things. So that's important, but you know what I mean. It's the hanky-panky that made those additional small little amounts, one group relating to another. So anyway, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed getting a bit of a background on me, some of my traits, stuff like that. So I hadn't looked at these for a long time, and last time I looked at them was back in 2017. And so obviously since then they've updated a lot of the stuff and all that. So it was quite interesting to see, to do an overview again over these things. I am thinking about, there is like another one that I could do. I'm thinking about it, where it goes into some more of the genetics and stuff like that. I haven't decided whether I'll order the kit yet or not. Still thinking about it, whether it's, do I waste money on it or not? So, because in the end, guys, you have to remember that just because certain genes associate with certain conditions, it doesn't mean that's your destiny. Genes can be silenced. Remember when I was talking about using phosphatidylserine to silence certain genes which are involved in degenerative brain diseases, how in Israel and Tel Aviv they've actually used them in high doses to switch off those genes completely. People that have got a specific type of disorder, brain disorder, amongst the Ashkenazi Jews, which are the European Jews, they use a high dose of phosphatidylserine, completely turn it off. They turn those genes off. So it is not your destiny, so to speak, just because something is associated. So, but it's still interesting to know susceptibilities, vulnerabilities, which means that you definitely say, I'm not going to entertain certain lifestyles or certain things because, I mean, if you know that you definitely, probably if you probably would know that if you're fearful of heights or certain things like that. So, but if you'll know that certain things you're predisposed to, like thinning of hair, like stuff like that, See, within my family, I'm the non-bald guy, where a lot of the others have got a lot of receding, they've got alopecia, receding hairline, bald spots, and stuff like that. And I was starting to have that sort of stuff as well myself. So, I sort of just accepted that this is the family curse. And the more carnivorous I went, it started reversing. And I'm going, okay, there's something in this. So I don't think we are naturally designed to be. Obviously, when you've got like Pottinger's cat over multiple generations, takes 3 generations to really stuff up the genetics, and then 3 generations to reverse that. So somebody that's actually had 3 generations of very poor diet ended up completely bald. Well, the descendants of that person are just going to be the beneficiaries if they do a species appropriate diet over 3 generations and restore and turn off those genes completely, because sometimes they can be hardwired in that regard. But if they are, let's say, epigenetically turned on or turned off due to lifestyle, then you can do something about it, which is what I did. But if they can't be, well, then it just sucks. It just is what it is, You just have to do the right thing for the next generations, but you're not going to get the benefit, so to speak. Now, how you deal with that, that's your issue, not mine. So that's like anything. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I've had my little rant at the end about genetics and how to view them. So I hope you enjoyed a bit of an overview of Harry Sopanos and his ancestry and his traits. I don't know whether you enjoyed it or not, or whether you found it interesting. But that is it. See yous.